I'm Angela, and welcome back to my channel, Divine Luxury. Today, I want to talk about why so many women say, I just want to feel safe in love, but still keep ending up in relationships or situations that feel emotionally unstable, confusing, and or draining. And I think this conversation is deeper, much deeper actually, than people make it. Because I do not believe the issue is only that women are choosing the wrong men. I think the deeper issue is that many women were never taught what safety actually feels like within themselves. So I want to break this down in a very simple way. I wrote 5 things on the board that I believe explain why love feels unsafe for so many women. So, the first one, point number 1, women were taught to chase love, not safety. You see that? So the first thing is this. A lot of women were taught to chase love, but they were not taught to look for safety within love, safety within relationship. They were taught to want romance, attention, validation, chemistry, attraction, and being chosen. But many women were never taught to ask more important questions like, and these are to yourself, does this feel peaceful? Does this feel emotionally safe? Can I be myself? Does this connection cost me my peace? And these things matter. These are the important markers of love. Because if you are taught to chase love without being taught to recognize safety, you can end up pursuing things that look exciting but do not actually feel secure. So the issue is not that women want love, because that's human nature and that's okay. The issue is that many women were taught to prioritize connection before peace. So there's a couple points that I want to make. Now, I know you may not be able to see everything, and I'm not going to write more points because you won't be able to see them, but I want to say that these are the things that should go into there: chosen, desired, wanted, but not taught, peace, right? So these are those things that are bullet points of this one that you need to really understand what it's about. So point number two is chaos is not equal to chemistry. Often chaos is mistaken for chemistry. Chaos does not equal chemistry is what I wrote right there. So, like I just said, often chaos gets mistaken for chemistry. People like that intensity. So this happens literally all the time, right? A lot of times a woman goes on a date and she doesn't feel electricity, she thinks it's not a good day. So a woman feels anxious, uncertain, activated, or emotionally consumed. And she thinks that, wow, this means that there is a real deep connection here. He must be the one. But a lot of times that is not depth. That is dysregulation. That is not intimacy. That is instability. And I think this is something women really need to hear. Anxiety is not love. Confusion is not passion. Inconsistency is not chemistry. Sometimes what people call chemistry is actually emotional activation of trauma wounds. It is the nervous system being triggered. And if a woman is used to instability, peace can actually feel unfamiliar. It can feel unfamiliar to her. It can even feel boring at first. The addiction to the rush is high. So a lot of women say they want love, but emotionally, they are still drawn to what keeps them unsettled. On the, I'm sorry, excuse me. So, I'm sorry, let's get to number two. So chaos does not equal chemistry. Some things that I want to point out is anxiety is not equal to love. Inconsistency is not equal to passion. Activation is not equal to intimacy. Let's move on to point three. Self-abandonment makes makes unsafe love feel familiar. So self-abandonment makes chaos feel familiar. The reason self-abandonment is such a big deal, and this is a big one, okay? This is a big one. If a woman has a pattern of ignoring her own needs, silencing her intuition, overgiving, over explaining, accommodating, over accommodating, I should say, or trying to hold everything together just to keep a connection, then unsafe love starts to feel safe. It starts to feel familiar. Familiar. Can you see that? Not because she wants pain. Who does? Come on. But because she has practiced leaving herself in order to stay connected. And that is what self-abandonment really is. Yes, it is. It is when connection becomes more important than truth. Your truth, your inner truth. What feels good to you, what feels safe to you. It is when being chosen becomes more important than being at peace. Protect your peace, okay? It is when a woman keeps overriding what she knows, what she feels, and what she needs, just to avoid loss, rejection, or discomfort. And once that becomes normal, dysfunction can start to feel familiar. And what is familiar often gets mistaken for what is meant to be. Really listen, gets mistaken for what is meant to be. Okay? I need you to really think on that, meditate on that, right? So under point 3, these things that can be happening. These things that you will be doing. You will be ignoring your intuition. Okay? You will be over-giving, over-explaining, leaving self for connection. You see self-abandonment right there. Okay. So, point number 4. Weak self-worth distorts what we accept. Weak self-worth distorts what we accept. When self-worth is weak, a woman starts tolerating things that do not deserve tolerance. Hear that, okay? She makes excuses for confusion. She minimizes red flags. She second guesses her standards. she keeps hoping that inconsistency will eventually turn into security. That does not happen, by the way. Spoiler alert. But self-worth shapes what a woman accepts. A woman with rooted self-worth does not just ask, do I want him? She also asks, what does this situation do to my spirit, to my nervous system? What does it do to my peace? I keep talking about peace, y'all. We need peace, okay? What does it do to my mind? These are the important questions that you need to ask yourself. And those are the very different questions that need to be reiterated. It's not about him. Because when self-worth is weak, a woman is more likely to negotiate with things she should not be negotiating with. She will call crumbs potential. She will call anxiety hope. She will call emotional labor love. And that is how unsafe dynamics stay alive and thrive. So here I'm going to make some points of what this looks like, okay? For point number 4. So it looks like confusion, inconsistency, minimizing red flags, and overriding standards. Now, moving on to the last point, number 5. Okay. Real safety begins with returning to yourself. See that? Safe love begins with returning to self. And the 5th point really is the most important point of this video. Real safety in love begins with returning to self. Yes, the person matters. You matter. The relationship matters. Love matters. Yes, who you choose matters. But if a woman is disconnected from herself, she will struggle to recognize safety clearly. So the deeper work is coming back home to yourself. Coming back home to your body. Coming back home to your intuition. Coming back home to your standards. Coming back home to your truth. Because once a woman returns to herself, she starts recognizing things much faster. You don't waste time. You don't. She can tell the difference between peace and confusion. She can tell the difference between care and control. She can tell the difference between chemistry and instability. And most importantly, she stops abandoning herself just to maintain connection. That is where real safety begins. Not in performance, not in proving, not in chasing, but in returning. On that point, I really want you to let that sink in. So, what this looks like, what safety looks like, is a return to body, a return to your intuition, a return to your standards, and a return to your truth. So, when a woman says, I just want to feel safe and loved, I think that desire is sacred. But the answer is deeper than just finding the right relationship. It is about healing the part of her that has been taught to chase love without safety. It is about healing the part of her that mistakes chaos for chemistry. It is about healing the habit of self-abandonment. And it is about rebuilding from the ground up self-worth. And it is about returning to herself so fully that unsafe love no longer feels normal. That is where the real work begins. And that is where everything starts to change.